So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise would be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So alhamdulillah, once again, we are grateful to Allah Ta'ala that He has enabled us to do this good deed, that has enabled us to acquire the obligatory knowledge of Islam, that Allah Ta'ala has enabled us to do something that benefits us for our hereafter. The knowledge of Islam, the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnah is the key to paradise. So with all the misguidance and misinformation that is happening out in the world today, we are grateful to Allah that we have been able to get the proper authentic information, that we have been able to learn the knowledge that we need so that we can obey Allah. We are thankful to Allah that we have gotten the knowledge that we need so that we can worship Allah Ta'ala and fulfill our obligations. And this is something that not many people have this, not many people get this blessing. So it is a great blessing, alhamdulillah. And of course, the greatest blessing is to be a Muslim. Yani, to have the correct belief in Allah, to believe in La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, according to what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam conveyed of the revelation, according to what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us from what was revealed to him. So there's many people that claim many things and they speak without knowledge, and they try to convince people that what they are teaching is Islam, but in reality, it is not. And there are many people who cannot tell the difference. They don't know because they did not learn the basics, so they don't know. And this is a big mistake. It is something that is very dangerous because the person might think that they're Muslim, but in reality, they're not. Because of a defect in the creed, like thinking that Allah is sitting on the throne, or like thinking that Allah is a light, or like thinking that Allah has organs, or like thinking that Allah goes up and down. All of those are examples of blasphemous beliefs that take the person out of Islam. So anybody who has that belief, thinking that that's Islam, they exit from Islam. Anybody who says that about Allah, they are not Muslim. And so if the person did not learn the basic knowledge, the basics of the creed, then that person, he might believe that and he won't know that it's wrong, and he will think that he is Muslim. But then when the angel of death comes to him, he gives him the news of the torture. So this is why we emphasize the creed, because it is by the creed that the Muslim can have a valid deed. It is with the creed of Islam that the person can have a valid deed. And the most important or the biggest good deed after being Muslim, so the best good deed after believing in La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, the best deed after that is the prayer, the 5 daily prayers. So the Muslim, the most reward that he can get from the physical act throughout his day is through the 5 daily prayers. So this is why it's important for the Muslim to perfect the 5 daily prayers. It's important for the Muslim to do his prayer perfectly. And so we should take care of making sure that we are doing our prayers correctly. We should be sure that we are doing the prayers in the perfect way so that we can maximize on getting the most reward out of the prayers, out of the 5 daily prayers. So alhamdulillah, with this knowledge, we can do that because then we learn what are the conditions for the prayer, we learn what are the recommended matters, etc. So we will mention some of those things after we finish from talking about these conditions. So we reach to section 14, which is on page 38. The author, rahimahullah, he said, section 14, among the conditions of the valid prayer are to direct oneself towards the qibla. So this is very important, and this is something that is very easy, and this is something that should not be an issue for the Muslim, because as you know, the rules of Islam, the laws of Islam that were revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are the easiest. So as you know, all the prophets, they came with Islam, and their creed was the same. So all the prophets, they came with La ilaha illallah. All the prophets came to teach the people that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah. And the prophets, they also received laws. And these laws, from time to time, they were different. So the final law, which is the law revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the last prophet and messenger sent to this planet, the law that was revealed to him is the easiest law. It's the most lenient law that is revealed by the creator of the universe. So we praise Allah for that. We say Alhamdulillah for that. What's an example of that? What's an example of how our law, how the law that was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the most lenient? What's a quick example? For example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us that the earth was made a masjid for us. What does that mean? That the earth was made a masjid for us? It means that the Muslim, wherever he is on the earth, whether he is at work, whether he is at home, whether he is in the field, whether he is at the park, whether he is on the plane, whether he is on the train, whether he is underground, whether he is in a boat, wherever that Muslim is, he can pray as long as he's on wudu and as long as he is praying in a place, like we mentioned in the last class, that the place that he touches during the prayer is pure, that it doesn't have najas, that it doesn't have unexempted filth. So if those conditions are fulfilled, then that Muslim, he can pray anywhere. He can pray in the mall, he can pray in the supermarket, he can pray in the street, he can pray in the field, he can pray at the park, he can pray at school, he can pray at work, anywhere that the Muslim is, he can pray. In the previous laws, in the laws that were revealed to previous messengers, the Muslim could only pray in the place that was specified for the prayer. So that means they had to leave wherever they are, go to that specific place, which is like a temple. They go to that specific place, and that's where they do the prayer. So they weren't able to pray at work, they weren't able to pray at school, they weren't able to pray at home. They had to do the prescribed prayer there at that place that was specified for the prayer. So this is something that shows the easiness, the lenient aspect of the law that was revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because we can pray wherever. It's easy. You just have to be on wudu, you face the qibla, and you start praying as long as the place that you're touching while praying is pure. So alhamdulillah, we praise Allah for that. And among the things that show that following Islam, following the rules of Islam are easy, among the things that show that it's easy to obey the orders of Allah is, excuse me, is finding the Qibla. Finding the Qibla. What does the word Qibla mean? The word Qibla means direction. That's the linguistic meaning of the word Qibla in Arabic. Now, in this specific context, when we're talking about the obligatory prayer, our Qibla is the direction that we are obligated to face for the prayer. So when we say the Qibla, when we're talking about prayer, we're talking about a specific direction that we have to face for the prayer. A specific location, a specific thing that we have to face for the prayer. And our Qibla is the Kaaba. Our Qibla is the Kaaba. Yes, the Kaaba is the first structure, the first place that was built for the worship of Allah only. And some scholars of Tawheed, some scholars of the Creed, they mentioned that Prophet Adam alayhi salam, he's the first one to build the Kaaba. And some said that the angels built it. But still, the Kaaba is the first place that was built for the worship of Allah. So it is a blessed place. And when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam received the revelation, the Muslims at that time, they were ordered to face the Kaaba, for their prayers. Because even before the 5 daily prayers were revealed on the night of Al-Isra and Al-Mi'raj, there were certain prayers that the Muslims did. And so they would face the Qibla when they did those prayers. They faced the Kaaba when they did those prayers. Then for a certain time, the Muslims were ordered to face Al-Masjid al-Aqsa for the prayer. And then again, the Muslims were ordered to face the Kaaba. And then it has stayed that way since then. And this is something that has occurred, or something that is known that has occurred. There's even a mosque there is a mosque that is called the Mosque of the Two Qiblas, where the Muslims were praying facing Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. And while they were praying, someone came in and said that the Prophet ﷺ ordered that the Muslims must now face the Kaaba. And while they were in the prayer, the Muslims turned to the Kaaba. Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah, MashaAllah. This shows the great discipline and the great level of obedience that the Muslims had during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and how they trusted each other and they took each other's word when they said the Prophet ﷺ said something, and they followed it immediately. Alhamdulillah. So that's the meaning of Qibla, facing the Kaaba for the prayer. And so it is easy to face the Kaaba. So any person, whether they are a 7-year-old Muslim or a 70-year-old Muslim, whether they are educated and they learn how to read and write, and whether they have a degree or they don't have a degree, whether they are shepherds or whether they are businessmen or whether they are doctors or whether they are lawyers or whether they are someone that's just living life in the wilderness, all of these Muslims, they can all easily find where the Kaaba is. They can all easily find where the Kaaba is. And so the scholars of Islam, they have told us what is the method, what is the way that we follow so that we can know where the Kaaba is. And this is something very simple, very easy. So they started with the obvious. Number one, if you can see the Kaaba, with your eyes, yani like who? Like the person that is there in Mecca. Subhanallah, may Allah enable us to pray in Al-Masjid al-Haram. May Allah enable us to see the Kaaba and pray in front of the Kaaba, pray with the Kaaba right in front of us. Ameen. This is a blessing. So that's the first thing. You see the Kaaba, you just face it. And subhanallah, you might think that that's obvious and that goes without saying. I think that too. But I heard one of my teachers, subhanallah, one of my teachers, he said that one of the brothers told him that he was in Mecca and they were doing the Hajj or they were doing the Umrah, and they were right there next to the Kaaba, and that one of the people that was there to do Hajj or to do Umrah, they asked that brother, where is the Qibla? Which way is the Qibla? Subhanallah. This is shocking, because it is as if they don't even know that what we're facing when we're far away from the Kaaba is the Kaaba. And that's what we call the Qibla. That person was there next to the Kaaba and they asked someone, where is the Qibla? May Allah Ta'ala protect us from such deep ignorance. Ameen. And we praise Allah that that person was able to ask one of our brothers and get the answer and become educated. Alhamdulillah. So it's a blessing for that person that he even was able to be directed and guided to the correct answer. So that's the first step. The first step is if you're there, you can see the Kaaba, then you just look at it and face it. Now, what's something interesting to point out here? Let's say you are there in Mecca, you're there in Al Masjid al Haram, or let's say you're there surrounding, in one of the buildings that are surrounding the Kaaba. There's hotels, there's skyscrapers, there's places surrounding the Kaaba. If you're there and you're like on the 90th floor, the 80th floor, you're going to be high above and you're going to see the Kaaba down below you. So how do you face the Kaaba in that case? Do you lean your chest downwards? If you're like 80 on the 80th floor and you can see the Kaaba from the balcony, do you go there and you lean over the balcony, making sure that your chest is pointing to the Kaaba? No, you just stand up straight. You stand up straight and you look into the direction that the Kaaba is, and you stand up straight. And you are aligned with that direction. That's all that the person needs to do. Now, let's say that the person, they cannot see the Kaaba because let's say they're far away. Can you see the Kaaba from Europe? No. Can you see the Kaaba from, even if from Al Medina? Can you see the Kaaba from Al Medina? No, you can't see the Kaaba from Al Medina. Can you see the Kaaba from India or Pakistan or Afghanistan? No, you can't see the Kaaba. Can you see the Kaaba from China or from America? No, you cannot. So what do you do in this case? Very, very easy. All that you do is that you figure out what is your relative direction from the Kaaba. What does that mean? You think about what direction you are from the Kaaba. So, for example, you would say, are you north of the Kaaba? Are you south of the Kaaba? Are you east of the Kaaba? Are you west of it? That's the first step, figuring out where you are. So if you're to the north of the Kaaba, then what do? It's very simple, very easy. Then you just face the opposite direction. So if you're north of it, if your position relative to the Kaaba is north, so in order to face the Kaaba, you would have to turn south. And if your relative position to the Kaaba is west, then in order to face the Kaaba, you would have to face east. And if your relative position from the Kaaba is east, then in order to face the Kaaba, you have to face west. And if your relative position from the Kaaba is south, then in order to face it, you have to turn north. Allahu Akbar. What a very simple way. And this is why the scholars of Islam, they have a consensus about this matter. And who is the one who tells us, who conveys to us this consensus? It is Al-Imam, the great Imam, Abu Hanifa, radiyallahu anhu, in the book called Tabyin al-Haqa'iq, Sharh Kanz al-Daqa'iq. This book contains that quote from Al-Imam Abu Hanifa. That book contains that quote from Al-Imam Abu Hanifa. Tabyin al-Haqa'iq, Sharh Kanz al-Daqa'iq. On the first volume, I'm sorry, first volume, page 101, depending on the copy print that you have. But the point is that it's documented from Al-Imam Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhu, the consensus about this matter. المشرق قبلة أهل المغرب والمغرب قبلة أهل المشرق والجنوب قبلة أهل الشمال والشمال قبلة أهل الجنوب. The east is the qibla of the people of the west. The west is the qibla of the people of the east. The south is the qibla of the people of the north. The north is the qibla of the people of the south. Allahu Akbar. We praise Allah and we thank Allah and we are grateful to Allah that He has provided for us these great scholars who are like stars, guiding stars in the night sky, like someone who is in the desert and they want to know which way they want to go, so they follow the stars. They see those stars high in the sky, shining bright, letting them know which way they're going, which direction they're going. Those scholars of Islam, they're like that. So once we know that, once we hear that, this is confirmed to us from such a credible and undisputed source as Al-Imam Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhu, we don't say anything else. We don't argue with that. We don't invent new things. We just go by that. And how easy is that? How simple is that? You don't need trigonometry. You don't need complicated mathematical equations. You don't need to factor in the curvature of the earth. You don't need to do these complicated things. If you're in the mountains, or if you're in the valleys, or if you're in the city, or if you are anywhere you are, you can easily find north, east, west, and south. You can easily know where one of those are, because once you know where one is, then you know where the rest are. If you know where north is, then you know where the rest of the directions are. Because if you know where north is, you just face north, and then you can extend your hands out to your sides, and then your right hand would be pointing east, and your left hand would be pointing west, and your back would be facing the south. This is an easy thing, subhanallah. No need for machines, no need for compass, no need for a computer, no need for a PhD, no need for a degree. So this is what you do. There's different ways to know the directions, natural ways, okay? There's different natural ways to know the direction. And this just requires basic information. Something that is related to our lives every single day, sunrise and sunset. Every single day that passes, sunrise and sunset. We see the sun go up, we see the sun come down. Where does the sun come from? The sun comes from the east. Where does the sun set? Where does the sun go? It sets in the west. So that's one way to easily know the directions. Another natural way to know the directions, and it's the strongest way, is with the North Star. And maybe one day, inshallah, after we finish this book, we can go into a presentation that is specific about the North Star, so you can see what it looks like. You can find it in the night sky yourself. But it's very easy. Basically, there is a constellation, a group of stars that are called the Big Dipper. And so there is one of those stars of the Big Dipper that is always pointing towards the North Star. And that North Star itself is the tail of the Little Dipper. And so these groups of stars, they rotate around, they go around in a circle, and they always, and that Big Dipper always points to the North Star. So once you know where the North Star is, like if it's nighttime, then all you do is mark the place that is facing towards the North Star. So now you know where north is, and then you know where the other directions are. And another way is by seeing where the sun comes from and seeing where going to. That's a general way to know northeast and south. Another way is by using the shadows. So when the sun is first coming up from the east, there's a shadow that is cast towards the west. Then as the sun is rising and rising and rising, that shadow shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and then it turns towards the north. And then when the sun is directly above an object, it is facing exactly north. The shadow is facing exactly north. So you can tell that way. Then once the shadow starts to shift over to the east, now you know that the sun has declined westward from the middle of the sky. Allahu Akbar. The knowledge really widens your horizon. Really widens your horizon. The scholars of Islam, they said that the knowledge expands the mind. The knowledge of Islam expands the mind. Alhamdulillah. So basically that's what you do. So let's take this example now. We are right now in North America. Where is North America compared to the Kaaba? North America is to the west. Nobody's going to say that America is to the east of Mecca because we're literally known as the West. And Europe is known as the West, and North America for sure is known as the West. Even though some people, they do refer to Europe as the West. But really, America is the West. And Yani, what does that mean? It means that we are to the west of Mecca. So automatically, how do we know where we have to face if we are in America? We have to face east. This is a no-brainer. And also, our position in America. Are we north of Mecca? Are we above Mecca? Are we higher than Mecca? Or are we lower? Are we north of Mecca or are we south of Mecca? This is easy to know. In America, we are north of Mecca. It is known that we are north of it. How do we know that? Because Mecca is on the equator and most of America is above the equator. Subhanallah. Now, I just saw a question there in the chat. It says, how can we know the direction from the sunset? Because you see where the sun is setting, so you see that general direction is west. So that would be like an estimation, an educated estimation. And we'll get to that, about how when you can't have definitive knowledge, you make ijtihad, you make a deduction based on the information that you have. You do your due diligence so that you can determine what the directions are. But so it's confirmed to any person that is objective. It's confirmed to any person that uses their mind. America, Canada are both north and west of Mecca. So we are northwest of Mecca. We are higher than Mecca, and we are to the west of Mecca. So what does that mean? That means that in order for us to face the Kaaba, regardless of the shape of the earth, we have to face east, a little bit south, depending on our position. If we are high above the equator, or if we're close to the equator, then we would adjust how far south we face of east. And that is the only way. There is no other valid way, because the shape of the earth is not a factor in following a direction, or the shape of the earth does not change what the directions are. So if the earth was shaped like a triangle or like a pyramid, north would still be north, south would still be south, east would still be east, west would still be west. North, south, east, and west would not change depending on the shape of something. So always, regardless of the shape of the earth, if the earth was like a rectangle, or if the earth was like a cube, or if the earth was any other shape, north would still be north, south would still be south, east would still be east, and west would still be west. Those things would not change. So our position relative to the Kaaba, compared to the Kaaba, is how we determine what direction we face. The direction is not a route. The direction is not a route. The direction is not a changing of bearing. The direction is a constant bearing. The direction is a constant singular, quote unquote, line that doesn't deviate right or left, regardless of whether the earth is curved or whatever. Regardless of that, because the earth, the surface of the earth is curved. But that does not change that we are northwest of the Kaaba. So our direction compared to the direction of the Kaaba is northwest. So in order to face it, we have to face southeast. We have to face east, a little to the south. Why do I mention this? Because in the Western Hemisphere, in the United States and Canada, there is a person that appeared in the early 70s or late 70s, I don't know. I think a Pakistani, I'm not sure. Someone that did not claim to be Muslim, did not claim to be a scholar. I don't know if they're Muslim or not, but someone that did not claim to be a scholar. They weren't an alim, they weren't a maulana, they weren't a mullah, they weren't a shaykh. They were admittedly, by their own admittance, by their own confession, they had no religious studies. They only had a secular education, a secular background in engineering and trigonometry and formulas and equations and this and that. That person wrote an article in the early 70s or late 70s, and this article was published by some government body, or it was featured in some government publication. And he claimed that the Muslims were facing the wrong way all the way up until 1970, because there had been Muslims in America for centuries already. There had been Muslims in America since the slaves or the people who were unjustly enslaved were brought over from Africa. There was Muslims on American soil. So the Muslims have been living in America for a while, and even you can find in America some cemeteries that are from the 1920s in California, where the graves are facing east to the south, east a little bit to the south. But then in 1970, this person came along. I forgot his name, by the way. But he claimed that the Muslims were facing the wrong direction, and because the earth is curved, that you have to do this triangulation and you have to follow the shortest distance. No, that's not true. We do not have to follow the shortest distance. We do not have to follow the shortest distance. It doesn't matter that the shortest distance between 2 points is a half circle, is a semicircle. Yes, we know that. That's how planes travel. When you take a flight from New York to Paris, you don't go straight across. You go north all the way up to where Greenland and Iceland, and then you curve down. You change your direction. Instead of flying north, you turn south, and then you go into Europe. Yes, planes travel that way because it is shorter, so it saves fuel, etc. But that is not a constant direction. That is not a constant direction. If you were to face a constant direction, if, for example, the plane that took off from New York heading to Paris, if they kept going north, they would get to the North Pole. They wouldn't get to Europe. They have to change their direction. So the same thing with the direction of the prayer. We face the direction that the Kaaba is in. We do not face the route that we would take to get to the Kaaba on a plane, because the plane changes direction. So anyway, this person, he caused a great fitna. He caused a big fitna, and because of him, the first supposed mosque to change the Qibla from east to northeast was actually a mosque called Muslim Mosque of America or something like that in Washington, D.C. Allahu Akbar. And then this misguidance and this bad thing, it spread to different places. And I've seen myself places that when they originally built in the 80s or whatever, or in the 70s or whatever, they were facing east, and then later they did renovations and they changed, they added a new building, and then they changed the direction to northeast, and they still kept the old part east. And so sometimes when it would be too full of people, there would be people in the new building facing northeast, supposedly praying, and people in the old building facing east. Subhanallah. This is what ignorance does to the individual. So the bottom line is we follow the consensus as recorded by Al-Imam Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhu, that he told us that the east is the qibla of the people of the west is the qibla of the people of the east, the north is the qibla of the people of the south is the qibla of the people of the north. And that is how we go. And the north is the qibla of the people of the south. That's how we go. We don't go by calculations. We don't say, oh, the earth is curved and we have to take the shortest distance between 2 points. No, we don't. We don't have to. And one easy way to know one easy way to know what we're talking about here is, let's say that you were near the Kaaba, but there was a mountain in between you and the Kaaba. So what you do is you have to face, like, let's say the mountain that is between you and the Kaaba, and you have to imagine, of course, as if the line from your chest extends through that mountain. So you don't have to, for example, face the edge of the mountain so that you can say, oh, well, my chest is going to go around the side of the mountain and hit the Kaaba. No. What we do is we face the actual Kaaba. And inshallah, one day we'll go more into detail about this issue. It is very important because imagine doing all those prayers and they being invalid. Because like we said here, among the conditions of the valid prayer are to direct oneself towards the Qibla. And if someone in America or Canada faces northeast, they're not facing the Qibla. They're facing London. Subhanallah. May Allah protect us. The next condition mentioned here is the setting in of the prayer time, which means that in order for the prayer to be valid, you have to know that the prayer time is in. The prayer time has to be in before you start the prayer. If you start the prayer before it's time without a religiously valid excuse, then the prayer is invalid. And there are different ways to determine the prayer time. One way is through using the shadows, as we've mentioned. When we talked about the prayer times, we talked about the shadows. And for Maghrib is when you see the disk of the sun completely set. And for Isha is when you see the redness of the twilight, the red twilight disappear in the western horizon. And for the Subh, the Fajr prayer, it's when you see the true dawn. And we talked about that already. In order for the prayer to be valid, the person has to be Muslim. So the non-Muslim, his prayer is not valid. The person has to become Muslim and then pray. At-tamyiz, that is for a child to reach a stage at which they understand when addressed and are able to answer, and we talked about that before. So the non-mumayyiz child is not allowed to pray. We're not allowed to let them pray or to imitate the movements of the prayer. We have to just tell them, sit down and watch how the Muslims pray. To deem the prayer an obligation when it is obligatory. So in order for the prayer to be valid, we have to know that Dhuhr is an obligation. We have to know that Asr is an obligation. We have to know that Maghrib is an obligation. We have to know that Isha is an obligation. And to cover with what conceals the color of the skin the entire body of a free woman except her face and hands, and to cover the area between the navel and the knees of a male, free or not, and a female slave from all sides except from underneath. So basically, the hawra has to be covered for the free woman, her whole entire awra except her face and her hands, and which is her awra, and all of her body except her face and her hands is awra. She has to make sure she covers her head. She has to make sure that there's no hair showing from her head, from her hijab, from her sideburns. She has to make sure that the spot between her neck and her chin, that area is covered because that's not part of the face. She has to make sure that her forearm is covered. She has to make sure that when she moves in the prayer, when she makes sujood, and when she makes ruku', she has to make sure that her clothes doesn't move in a way that she exposes part of her body. And this has to be from all sides except from underneath. What does that mean? From all sides except from underneath? It means that if she was, let's say, praying on a platform and that platform was transparent and there was somebody underneath her, like a glass, and they were looking up from the platform and they would be able to see, let's say, under her dress, this would not affect her prayer. Her prayer would still be valid. But when it means from the sides, it means that if, let's say, she had a skirt that went down, let's say, to her ankles, and then she had long socks that went up to her thighs, but then nothing else underneath, right? She had a shirt and a skirt. The skirt went down to her ankles, but it didn't touch the floor. And she had socks on that went all the way up to her thighs. So that space that is between the end of the skirt and the floor, right? Because we said that the skirt goes to the ankles. That space, technically, if someone looked from under there, they would be able to see, let's say, her upper thigh. This would invalidate her prayer because that's considered to be from the side and not from underneath. As for the man, he has to cover what is between the navel and the knees with a fabric that conceals the color of the skin, even if that fabric that the man is using, even if from the sides, let's say, if someone was wearing an izar, a man was wearing an izar, the izar went to the middle of his shin, and he wasn't wearing anything else underneath. If someone technically looked from under there, they would be able to see his awra, but for the man, it doesn't invalidate. And the same thing for the female slave. She has to cover what's between the navel and the knees with something that conceals the color of her skin, like the man, same as the man. For the female slave, her situation in the prayer is the same as the man in terms of covering. For the free woman, she has to cover her entire body except her face and her hands from all sides except from underneath. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. We will continue on, inshallah, the next chapter next week, section 15, which should be the invalidators of the prayer. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make us pious Muslims. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make our final words, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah. We ask Allah Ta'ala to grant relief and patience to all the Muslims all over the world that are suffering from oppression, that are suffering from calamities. We ask Allah Ta'ala to grant them patience and firmness in the truth, and to grant them reward for their patience. And we ask Allah to relieve their hearts of pain and sadness, and to grant them paradise, and their loved ones, the Muslim relatives who have passed away. We ask Allah that we be united in paradise with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen.